You ever have one of those moments where the air in the room changes? I mean, really changes. Not the temperature dropping because someone left a door open. Not a draft from a loose window pane. I'm talking about the air of trust. The air of safety. The air that holds a family together. The invisible thread that runs from a father's handshake to a mother's hug to a child's belief that the world is, at its core, a decent place. That air. Have you ever felt it turn? Have you ever been sitting at a table, surrounded by the faces you love most, and felt something cold slither in through the cracks? It doesn't come with a noise. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. And suddenly, you realize that the person sitting across from you, the one who shares your last name, the one who ate at your table as a kid, the one who calls you family with such ease, that person has been measuring you, not loving you, measuring you, counting what they can take. I'm going to tell you a story. A true story, as true as these hands in front of me. It's about a young man I knew. Still know. Actually, his name is Samuel, but back then, everybody called him Sammy. Samuel is the name he grew into. Sammy is the name he suffered with. And I want you to understand Sammy before I tell you what happened to him, because if you don't understand the clay, you'll never understand the crack. Sammy was born with a quiet heart, not a shy heart. There's a difference. A shy heart hides. A quiet heart observes. From the time he was knee-high to a grasshopper, Sammy watched. He watched his daddy build a front porch with nothing but a hammer, a saw, and a level that had been in the family since the Great Depression. He watched his daddy measure twice, cut once, and never, ever blame the wood if the board came out wrong. He watched his mama in the kitchen, the way she'd hum an old hymn while stirring a pot of greens, the way she'd taste a spoonful and close her eyes, adjusting the salt not with a measuring spoon but with a feeling in her bones. Sammy learned early that the best things in life are not fast. They are slow. They are patient. They are made with hands that have calluses and hearts that have been broken and mended. When Sammy was 14 years old, he asked his daddy for a smoker. Not a fancy one. A plain one. A barrel smoker with a rusted door and a crooked thermometer. His daddy found one at a garage sale for $10. Brought it home in the back of the pickup. And that summer, Sammy taught himself to smoke meat. He started with chicken. Burnt the first 3 batches to dry, black crisps. His daddy didn't say a word. Just helped him clean out the ash and said, "Try again, son. Low and slow. That's the secret to everything." By the end of that summer, Sammy could smoke a chicken so tender the meat fell off the bone if you looked at it wrong. He started experimenting. A little brown sugar here, a pinch of cayenne there. He kept a spiral-bound notebook, the kind with a cardboard cover, and he wrote everything down. Too much smoke. Not enough salt. Try applewood next time. That notebook became his treasure, his map. By the time Sammy was 22, he had turned that rusty barrel smoker into a small catering business. He called it Sammy's Table. Not Sammy's Catering. Not Sammy's Fine Foods. Sammy's Table. Because he wanted people to feel like they were sitting at his own kitchen table, pulling up a chair, and sharing a meal made by someone who cared. He didn't have a food truck. He didn't have a storefront. He had a beat-up station wagon, the kind with wood paneling on the sides, and a cooler in the back that he kept on ice. He'd take orders from folks at the auto parts plant where he worked the night shift. He'd make trays of pulled pork, cornbread muffins the size of your fist, baked beans with bits of brisket mixed in, and a banana pudding that would make you want to slap your mama. That's what folks said. "Sammy, this pudding makes me want to slap my mama." And he'd just smile, that quiet smile, and say, "Save the slapping for later. Eat another spoonful." He started getting bigger orders. The local church asked him to do a funeral reception. 150 people. He stayed up all night smoking 3 whole pork shoulders. He fell asleep standing up, leaning against the smoker, and woke up with a perfect smoke ring on the meat and a burn on his forearm that turned into a scar he wore like a medal. The funeral was for old Mr. Henderson, a mailman who had walked the same route for 42 years. After the service, people ate Sammy's food, and they cried, and they laughed, and they told stories about Mr. Henderson. And Sammy stood in the corner, leaning against the wall, watching. He wasn't the star. He wasn't the show. He was the table, the thing that held everyone together, and he loved that feeling more than anything he had ever loved. Now, into this quiet, slow, honest world came a man named Vincent. Uncle Vincent. Vinny, to the family. Vinny was Sammy's mother's younger brother. And if Sammy was a slow river, Vinny was a fast firecracker. Always moving. Always talking. Always selling something. Vinny had been a used car salesman for a while, then a real estate agent, then a guy who sold imported textiles out of the trunk of his car, then a business consultant who wore a suit that was always one size too tight and a smile that was always 1 watt too bright. Vinny was the kind of man who would call you brother even if he'd just met you 5 minutes ago. He had a handshake that was all palm and no grip, like shaking hands with a fish, And he had a way of looking at your plate while you were eating, not at your face, like he was calculating the cost of every ingredient. Vinny showed up to family functions like he was doing everyone a favor. He'd walk in late, holding a store-bought pie, and say, "Sorry I'm late, had $1 million deal cooking." And everyone would nod and smile because that's what family does. But Sammy's daddy, old Frank, the man who built porches and never borrowed a dime in his life, he didn't smile. He'd just look at Vinny with those steady eyes and say, "Pull up a chair, Vinny. The food's getting cold." And Vinny would pull up a chair, but he'd never really sit down. He'd perch, like a bird ready to fly away. For years, Vinny paid no attention to Sammy's cooking. He'd eat it, sure, because the food was free and it was good. But he'd eat it the way a shark eats a fish, fast, without tasting, without thanking, just fuel for the next deal. But then something happened. Sammy's table started getting noticed. A local food writer, a woman named Diane who wrote a column called Bites of the City, wrote a little paragraph about Sammy's pulled pork. She called it the kind of sandwich that makes you close your eyes and say amen. That paragraph got clipped and passed around. Orders doubled, then tripled. Sammy had to quit the night shift at the auto parts plant to keep up. He was still working out of his apartment kitchen. But he had dreams. Big dreams. He wanted a real commercial kitchen. He wanted a smoker the size of a small car. He wanted to hire his cousin Marcus, who had just lost his job at the warehouse. Vinny saw that paragraph. And Vinny started coming around more. Not with store-bought pie. With questions. "So, Sammy, where do you get your pork? Sammy, what's your profit margin on a full tray? Sammy, have you thought about scaling up? Sammy, you need a partner. Someone with connections, someone who can open doors." And Sammy, being young and good-hearted and raised to believe that family is family no matter what, Sammy opened the door. He opened it wide. He showed Vinny the spiral-bound notebook. Page after page. The brisket rub. Brown sugar, smoked paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, a touch of cayenne, and a secret ingredient, a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon, just enough to make people wonder. The collard greens, smoked turkey neck, a splash of apple cider vinegar, a pinch of red pepper flakes, and a long slow simmer that lasted 6 hours minimum. The cornbread, buttermilk, 2 eggs, a half cup of melted butter, and a tablespoon of honey right at the end. The banana pudding, vanilla wafers, fresh bananas, a pudding made from scratch with egg yolks and real vanilla bean, topped with a meringue that had to be whipped until it stood in peaks. He showed Vinny his suppliers. Old Man Ridley, a farmer 2 hours upstate who raised hogs the old way, letting them root in the woods, feeding them acorns and whey. Ridley didn't have a website. He had a phone number written on a piece of duct tape stuck to his barn door. He delivered once a week in a dented pickup truck, and he and Sammy would sit on the tailgate and drink sweet tea and talk about the weather. He showed Vinny the bakery that gave him day-old bread for his bread pudding. A little Greek place run by a woman named Eleni who had hands like leather and a laugh like a tea kettle. He showed Vinny his pricing sheet, his cost breakdown, his list of regular customers, even the little jingle he paid a neighbor to record for a radio ad, Sammy's Table, where every meal's a fable. Vinny nodded. Vinny smiled. Vinny put a hand on Sammy's shoulder and said, "Give me 2 weeks, my boy. I'm gonna get you a meeting with a real investor. A man named Harrison. Big money. Big vision. You and me, we're gonna be partners." And Sammy believed him. Because that's what you do when your uncle looks you in the eye and promises you the moon. You believe him. But here's what Sammy didn't know. While Vinny was smiling and nodding and promising, he was also making phone calls. To Old Man Ridley. To Eleni at the bakery. To every customer on Sammy's list. He introduced himself as Sammy's business partner, which was a lie, and he started asking questions. "How much do you pay? How often do you deliver? Would you be interested in a new catering company? One with lower prices? One with professional marketing? One run by a man with 20 years of business experience?" And then, one Tuesday morning, Sammy walked out to his station wagon to load up for a lunch delivery, and he saw a flyer tucked under his windshield wiper. It was glossy, expensive, full color. It said, in big gold letters, "Vincent's Vintage Kitchen, finer food, lower prices." And underneath, a menu. The same brisket, the same collard greens, the same cornbread with honey butter, the same banana pudding. Every recipe, copied word for word. And the prices were 20% lower. 20%. Just enough to steal customers without looking desperate. Sammy stood there in the parking lot, holding that flyer, and his hands started to shake. Not from cold. From something else. Something he didn't have a name for yet. He drove to his mama's house. He showed her the flyer. She looked at it, and her face went pale, and she said, "I'll call him. I'll talk to him. He's my brother. I'll make him stop." But before she could pick up the phone, the calls started coming in. Customers canceling. "So sorry, Sammy, but we found a better price." Nothing personal, Sammy, but business is business. Sammy, I heard your uncle is doing the same food for less. You gonna match his prices? Sammy couldn't match the prices. He was already running on thin margins, paying old man Ridley fair prices, paying Eleni for her bread, paying himself just enough to cover his rent. Vinny could charge less because Vinny wasn't paying for quality. Vinny was buying factory-farmed pork from a warehouse. Vinny was using canned greens and liquid smoke. Vinny was cutting every corner he could find. But the customers didn't know that. All they saw was the price. The worst part came on Sunday. Family dinner at Sammy's mama's house. The whole clan was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. The table was long, covered with a white cloth that had been in the family for 50 years. Sammy sat at one end. His daddy sat next to him, quiet as always. Vinny walked in late, of course, holding a bottle of sparkling cider like he was bringing a gift from a king. He sat down across from Sammy. And then, in front of everyone, Vinny cleared his throat. He put down his fork. He looked around the table with an expression of fake concern, the kind a politician uses when he's about to say something cruel. And he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You know, I hate to say this, I really do, but someone has to be honest. Sammy's a fine cook. A fine cook. But he's too young to lead a business. He doesn't understand overhead. He doesn't understand marketing. He doesn't understand the hard decisions you have to make to survive. I'm not trying to compete with him. I'm trying to save the family name from a failed venture. Somebody had to step in." The table went silent. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Sammy's mama opened her mouth to speak, but Vinny held up a hand. No, let me finish. I love the boy. He's my nephew. But love doesn't pay the bills. He needs to step aside and let the adults work. There's no shame in that. He can come work for me. I'll give him a job in the kitchen. A fair wage. He can learn from someone who's been around the block. Sammy didn't say a word. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He didn't throw his glass of apple cider in Vinny's face, though every nerve in his body wanted to. He just stood up, very slowly, folded his napkin, placed it next to his plate, and walked out the front door. He didn't look back. His daddy watched him go. His daddy didn't follow. His daddy knew that some hurts are too fresh for words. They need silence. They need time. They need the dark. For 2 months, Sammy's table was a ghost. The station wagon stayed parked. The smoker went cold. The spiral-bound notebook sat on the kitchen counter, untouched. Sammy took a job doing maintenance at an apartment complex. He painted fences. He unclogged drains. He mowed lawns. He worked with his hands, but not in the way he loved. His hands felt empty. His heart felt emptier. He stopped going to family dinners. He stopped answering calls from his mama. He stopped going to Sunday gatherings. He just disappeared into the gray fog of a man who has been betrayed. During those 2 months, Vinny's vintage kitchen grew. He got a loan from a bank. He rented a small storefront. He hired a graphic designer to make a logo that looked like an old-timey butcher shop. He even got a write-up in the local penny saver, the one they slide into your driveway in a plastic bag. The headline said, "Local man brings authentic barbecue to downtown." Vinny did interviews. He talked about family recipes passed down for generations. He talked about old-world techniques. He never mentioned Sammy's name. He didn't have to. He just erased him. But here's the thing about a lie. A lie is like a piece of cheap furniture. It looks good from far away, but the closer you get, the more you see the cracks. Vinny's food was not Sammy's food. It looked similar, but it didn't taste similar. The brisket was dry. The greens were salty. The cornbread was sweet like cake, not like bread. Customers noticed. They didn't say anything at first, because the prices were low and people are polite. But they noticed. And slowly, quietly, the word started to spread. It's not the same. It's not as good. I don't know what it is, but something's missing. What was missing was love. What was missing was patience. What was missing was a man who stayed up all night tending a fire because he cared about the people who would eat his food. Now, while Vinny was building his house of cards, Sammy was doing something else. He wasn't plotting revenge. Not at first. He was just sitting. Sitting in his garage with the door half open, watching the light change. He had the spiral-bound notebook in his lap. He wasn't reading it. He was holding it, like a man holds a photograph of someone he's lost. And slowly, over those 2 months, something started to shift inside him. Not a plan. Not a strategy. A realization. He remembered something his daddy told him when he was 12 years old, after a bully stole his lunch money. His daddy sat him down on the front porch and said, "Son, there are 2 ways to deal with a thief. You can chase him, or you can build a better door. Chasing him makes you tired. Building a better door makes you strong." Sammy decided to build a better door. He didn't try to fight Vinny's prices. He couldn't. Vinny had a bank loan and a storefront and a fancy logo. Sammy had a station wagon and a cooler and a heart. So he went deeper. He went to Old Man Ridley, the hog farmer, and said, "I can't pay you what Vinny pays you. I don't have that kind of money. But I'll tell every single person who eats my food exactly which farm the pork came from. I'll put your name on my menu. I'll tell your story. People will know your name, Ridley. They'll know that you raise your hogs in the woods, on acorns and whey. They'll know that you're a good man. And they'll come back because of that." Old Man Ridley shook Sammy's hand. His grip was firm, calloused, real. He went to Alani, the Greek baker, and said, "I can't afford your day-old bread anymore. Vinny offered you more money, I get it. But I'll tell people your name. I'll send customers to your bakery. And when I have more money, I'll pay you double what he pays you. Not because I have to. Because you're family." Alani hugged him so hard he felt his ribs creak. She said, "You bring me the bread. I'll give it to you free. For 6 months. And then we talk." He went to the church ladies who made the jams and pickles, the ones sold at the fall bazaar. He said, "I want to sell your preserves at my table. No markup. Every jar, every penny goes back to the church. I just want to say I use the best." The church ladies prayed over him. They put their hands on his shoulders and they prayed. Not for revenge, for strength. He rebuilt, slower this time, like a man setting bricks one by one. No grand opening. No press release. He started taking orders again. Just a few. Just from people who remembered. He'd deliver the food himself, in the station wagon, and he'd sit and talk with them. "How's your mother's arthritis? Did your son get that promotion? How was the fishing trip?" He wasn't selling food. He was selling care. He was selling presence. He was selling the thing that Vinny could never counterfeit, a human being who sees you. And people felt it. They started coming back. One customer told another. Another told another. It wasn't fast. It was slow. The way a good fire burns. Low and slow. By the end of the 3rd month, Sammy was back to his old volume. By the end of the 4th month, he had surpassed it. He still didn't have a storefront. He didn't want one. He had his table. His folding table. The one he set up at the farmer's market every Saturday. The line would start forming at 8 in the morning, and by noon, he'd be sold out. People would stand in line for 45 minutes just to get a pulled pork sandwich and a cup of banana pudding. They didn't care about the price. They cared about the feeling. Now, here's where the story turns. And I need you to listen close, because this is the part that makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. There was a man in the city. A big man. Not in size. In reputation. His name was Harrison. Arthur Harrison. He had made his fortune in real estate, then sold everything, and now he spent his days looking for small businesses to invest in. Not chains, not franchises, real, authentic, handmade businesses. He had a rule. He would never invest in a business he couldn't taste. So he traveled. He drove back roads. He went to county fairs and church picnics and farmers markets. He was looking for something he called the truth on a plate. He had a palate like a jewel thief. As I said before, he could taste a fake from a mile away. One bite, and he knew if the cook was cutting corners. One bite, and he knew if the recipe came from a box or from a grandmother's kitchen. Harrison had heard about Vinny's vintage kitchen. The glossy flyers, the penny saver article. He made a note to visit. He drove to Vinny's storefront on a Tuesday afternoon. He ordered a sampler platter. Brisket, greens, cornbread, banana pudding. He took one bite of the brisket, then another. Then he set down his fork. He called the waitress over. "Is the owner here?" he asked. The waitress nodded and went to get Vinny. Vinny came out in his tight suit and his bright smile. He extended his hand. "Mr. Harrison, I've heard so much about you. Welcome to Vincent's Vintage Kitchen. Family recipes. Generations of tradition. I'm so glad you came." Harrison didn't shake his hand. He just looked at him. Then he looked at the plate. Then he looked back at Vinny. "Mr. Vincent," he said, "this brisket is dry. The greens are salty. The cornbread is cake. And the banana pudding has vanilla extract, not vanilla bean. I can taste it. Who really made these recipes?" Vinny's smile flickered. "Just for a second. I made them. They're family recipes." Harrison stood up. He left a $20 bill on the table. He didn't say another word. He walked out. But he didn't go home. He had heard another name. A name that kept coming up when he asked people at the farmer's market. "Where's the best barbecue?" he'd ask. And people would say, "Sammy's table, but you have to get there early. He sells out." He asked about Vinny. People would shrug. "It's okay. But it's not Sammy's." Harrison drove to the farmer's market the next Saturday. He got there at 7:30. The line was already 20 people deep. He waited. When he got to the front, he saw Sammy, a young man with flour on his apron and tired eyes and a quiet smile. Sammy handed him a sandwich, pulled pork on a homemade bun, with a little cup of slaw on the side. Harrison took a bite. He closed his eyes. He chewed slowly. Then he opened his eyes and said, "Son, I need to talk to you." They sat on a bench by the parking lot. Harrison asked Sammy about his recipes. Sammy told him the truth. About the spiral-bound notebook. About his daddy's porch. About his mama's apple butter. About Mrs. Ida May's collard greens. About Old Man Ridley's hogs. About Elaine's bread. About the church lady's jams. He told him everything. And then he told him about Vinny. Harrison listened. He didn't interrupt. When Sammy was done, Harrison sat in silence for a long moment. Then he said, "Sammy, I'm going to make you a proposal. But first, I need to do something. I need you to come with me. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, my office in the city. Can you do that?" Sammy said yes. The next day, Sammy drove to the city. He parked his station wagon next to a building with a marble lobby and a security guard. He felt out of place. He almost turned around and left, but he didn't. He took the elevator to the 12th floor. A receptionist led him to a conference room. And there, sitting at the head of a long mahogany table, was Arthur Harrison. And sitting in a chair across from him, looking like a man who had just swallowed a mouthful of glass, was Uncle Vinny. Vinny was sweating. His tie was loose. His collar was unbuttoned. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept. He looked at Sammy, and for the first time in his life, he looked small. He looked like a man who had been caught. Harrison stood up. He gestured to a chair next to Vinny. "Please, sit down, Samuel." Sammy sat. He didn't look at Vinny. He looked at Harrison. Harrison picked up a phone on the table. He pressed a button. The phone rang. A voice answered. Harrison put it on speaker. "Samuel Coleman?" the voice said. "Yes, sir," Sammy said. His voice was steady. "This is my lawyer. Mr. Harrison has asked me to review your trademark application for the recipes in your notebook. It's been approved. As of this morning, those recipes are legally yours. No one can use them without your permission." Vinny made a sound. A small, strangled sound. Like a mouse caught in a trap. Harrison looked at Vinny. Then he looked at Sammy. Then he spoke. His voice was calm. Measured. Like a judge delivering a verdict. "Samuel, I had you come here because I wanted you to hear this. Your uncle has been using your recipes without your permission. He has been lying to customers, to suppliers, to his own family. He has been operating under a false name. He has been serving food that is not his own. I have the evidence. I have the witnesses. I have the trademark. I can take him to court. I can bankrupt him. I can put him out of business by the end of the month. Or," he paused. He looked at Sammy. "Or I can do something else. I can offer you the investment I was going to offer him. $1 million. To build Sammy's table. Real kitchens. Real equipment. Real marketing. On one condition." "What condition?" Sammy asked. "That you do not sue your uncle. That you do not seek revenge. That you walk out of this room and never speak of this again in a court of law. The investment is yours either way. But I want to see what kind of man you are. Do you want to destroy him? Or do you want to build something?" The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Vinny was breathing in short, sharp gasps. His hands were shaking. He looked at Sammy. And for the first time, there was no calculation in his eyes. There was fear. Real, raw, ugly fear. Sammy sat there. He didn't speak for a long time. He thought about the flyer under his windshield wiper. He thought about the family dinner. The cruel words. The cold silence. He thought about the 2 months in the garage, the empty hands, the hollow chest. He thought about revenge. He had dreamed about it. He had imagined Vinny on his knees. He had imagined a courtroom, a gavel, a headline. He had imagined the satisfaction of watching his uncle lose everything. In his darkest moments, he had imagined it in vivid, painful detail. And then he thought about his daddy. About the porch. About the words, "Chasing him makes you tired. Building a better door makes you strong." He looked at Harrison. He said, "I'll take the investment. And I won't sue him. But I want something else." "Name it." "I want him to come to my mama's house. Next Sunday. Family dinner. And I want him to say what he did. Out loud. In front of everyone. No excuses. No justifications. Just the truth. And then I want him to leave. Not because I'm punishing him. Because I need time. And so does he." Harrison nodded. He looked at Vinny. "Do you agree?" Vinny nodded. He couldn't speak. The next Sunday, Sammy drove to his mama's house. He wore a clean shirt. He brought a tray of brisket. The same brisket. The one with the molasses glaze and the touch of cinnamon. The whole family was there. His daddy. His mama. The aunts and uncles. The cousins. The grandparents. They sat at the long table with the white cloth. And then the door opened. Vinny walked in. No pie. No fancy suit. Just a plain shirt and a face that looked like it had been left out in the rain. He stood at the head of the table. He looked at Sammy. Then he looked at the floor. And he spoke. His voice cracked. He said, "I stole from him. I stole his recipes. I stole his customers. I stole his name. I lied to you. I lied to everyone. I'm not a businessman. I'm a thief. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. I know that doesn't make it right. But I'm sorry. He stood there. No one spoke. Sammy's mama was crying. Sammy's daddy was staring at the table. The clock ticked on the wall. Sammy stood up. He walked to the kitchen. He opened the cupboard. He took down an extra plate. He brought it to the table. He set it down, right next to his own seat. He didn't say, "I forgive you." He didn't say, "Sit down." He just set the plate there. An empty plate. A place setting. An invitation. Vinny looked at the plate. Then he looked at Sammy. Tears ran down his face. He didn't sit. He turned around. He walked out the door. And he didn't come back. Not that night. Not for a long time. Now, here's the part you've been waiting for. The part about the revenge. The part about the reflection. Because Sammy did take revenge. Not the revenge you think. He didn't sue. He didn't humiliate. He didn't destroy. But he took revenge in the only way that matters. He became successful. He became happy. He became whole. He took Harrison's investment. He built a real kitchen. He hired his cousin Marcus. He hired Mrs. Ida May's grandson. He hired the church ladies to make their jams full-time. He opened a small storefront. Not big, not flashy. Just a place with a counter and a few tables and a sign that said Sammy's Table. The line went out the door every day. He paid Old Man Ridley double. He paid Alani triple. He bought his mama a new porch. He bought his daddy a new hammer. And Vinny? Vinny's vintage kitchen closed within 6 months. Not because Sammy did anything. Because the truth has a way of catching up. The customers stopped coming. The bank called the loan. The landlord locked the door. Vinny moved into a small apartment above a laundromat. He took a job selling shoes at the mall. He was a ghost. A forgotten name. But here's what kept Sammy up at night. Here's what made him sit on his back porch, smoking a brisket, staring at the stars, and feeling a weight he couldn't name. He thought about that plate. That empty plate. He thought about Vinny's tears. And he realized something that almost broke him. He realized that he had wanted Vinny to sit down. He had wanted Vinny to eat. He had wanted Vinny to be sorry not because he was caught, but because he understood. And Vinny couldn't do that. Vinny wasn't ready. Vinny was still too proud, too scared, too broken to sit at the table. And Sammy felt pain. Not the sharp pain of betrayal. A deeper pain. The pain of watching someone you once loved destroy themselves. The pain of offering forgiveness and having it refused. The pain of realizing that revenge, even the gentle revenge of success, still leaves a scar. Because revenge, no matter how clean, is still a cutting. It still separates. It still divides. Sammy thought about what would have happened if he had sued Vinny. If he had taken him to court. If he had watched a judge bang a gavel and sent his uncle into bankruptcy. He would have won. He would have been righteous. He would have been the hero of every newspaper article. And he would have been alone. Because the family would have taken sides. The table would have cracked. The white cloth would have been stained. He would have had his revenge, and he would have had nothing else. But he didn't take that revenge. He took a different path. He built a table. He left a seat empty. And he waited. He is still waiting. Maybe Vinny will come back someday. Maybe he won't. But the seat is still there. The plate is still clean. The invitation is still open. And that, my friend, is the hardest thing a human being can do. To hold the door open for someone who slammed it in your face. To set a plate for someone who stole your bread. To wait. To hope. To build instead of burn. Sammy is 45 years old now. He has 3 kids. They help him in the kitchen on Saturdays. He still uses the spiral-bound notebook. The pages are yellow and stained with grease and love. He still smokes his brisket low and slow. He still delivers food to old customers who can't get out of the house. He still sits on his back porch at night, watching the stars, feeling the weight of the world. But the weight is different now. It's not the weight of anger. It's the weight of grace. The heavy, beautiful, exhausting weight of choosing to be kind when you have every right to be cruel. So if you're sitting there tonight, thinking about someone who wronged you, someone who stole from you, someone who lied about you, someone who made you feel small, I'm not going to tell you to forget. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't hurt. It does. It hurts like a toothache. It hurts like a broken bone. It hurts like watching a house burn down. But I'm going to tell you what Sammy told me. He looked at me with those tired, kind eyes, and he said, "The best revenge is no revenge at all. The best revenge is becoming so full of good things, good work, good friends, good food, good love, that there ain't no room left for the poison. The best revenge is a table with an empty seat. The best revenge is a plate that's always clean. The best revenge is a door that's never locked." He took a breath. He looked at his hands, the hands that built something true. I could have torn him down. I could have crushed him. I could have made sure he never got back up. But I would have cut my own hands in the process. Instead, I built a table, and I left a seat empty, and when he's ready to sit down and be honest, the seat is still there. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever done. The narrator picks up his empty glass. He looks at it. He sets it down. He looks at you one last time. His voice is soft now, almost a whisper. Don't let the thieves steal your peace. That's the only thing they can't counterfeit. Build your table. Leave a seat. And wait. The rest is not your part to carry.